All right, so we're going to take a look at the business math class example now. And it says, let R of x equal negative 8x plus 240 represent the number of students in a large business mathematics class where x represents the number of hours of study required weekly. Find the number of students present at each of the following levels of required study. So the first thing I want to do is I want to write down my function rule, R of x, and it says negative 8x plus 240. And then they tell us, again, x represents the number of hours of study time. And R of x represents the number of students in the class. Okay, so now we know what we're working with. And what we need to do is find the number of students present at each of the following levels of required study. So x represents the number of hours of study time, and they want us to find what happens when x is 0. When there's no study time, how many kids are going to be in the class? Then they want x equals 5. If 5 hours a week are required, how many people will be in the class? And then if 10 hours a week are required, how many people would be in the class? So that's A, B, and C. The question is, and we have to kind of wrap our brains around this, the more study time they're asking for, what should we anticipate happen? The number of students are going to drop, right? Because if someone's not willing to put 10 hours of studying in, they don't want to take the class. So let's see what it turns out to. So this business math teacher found this model where we're going to plug 0 in. 0 study time means that 240 students are going to sign up for the class. And then as we increase the number of hours per week that's required for studying, that's negative 40 plus 200. That's going to be, negative 40 plus 240 is 200. Look at the drop. When you have 5 hours of required study time, you dropped 40 students right away. Interesting. So if we have this, where we have 10 hours a week of study time, and we're going to take our 240 and subtract 80, we're at 160 students. So it went from 240 down to 160 when you go from no hours of studying required to 10 hours a week of studying required. That's a big drop, almost 100 people. Part D is the rate of change question. It says, what is the rate of change of the number of students in the class with respect to hours of study? Interpret the negative sign in the answer. So what does it mean with the number of students in the class with respect to the number of hours of study? So the rate of change is going to be our minus 8. But what does that really mean? Rate of change is really slow, but what does that minus 8 really mean? Well, x represents the number of hours of study time, right? So negative 8x means that for every x, in this case, for every hour of studying, required, for every hour, for every x, what is the minus 8 going to do? 8 people will drop the class. That's what this means. This means that for every time I put a 1, increase this by an hour, that's how many people are going to drop off. So if I put this 1 hour in, 8 people are going to drop off. If I put 2 hours in, 16 people are going to drop off. So for every hour of studying required, 8 people are going to drop the class. So the negative represents the dropping. The class size is going to decrease. The negative indicates students leaving the class. There will be less students in the class. And then it says the professor in charge of the class likes to have exactly 16 students. So not 240, not 200, not 160. They want 16 students. How many study hours must be required in order to have exactly 16 students? So then they give you a little hint, and it says, find a value of x such that r of x equals 16. So what they're telling me to do is put 16 in the r of x spot. So let me move this up. I have 16 equals negative 8x plus 240. How many hours, how many x's do I need to create such a drop so that only 16 people remain in the class? Well, let's find out. Subtract your 240. You get negative 8x on the right. 16 minus 240 gives me negative 224. Divide by negative 8. Here it is. 28 hours per week. Remember, x represents hours. So this is 28 hours of study time per week. The only people who would be willing to put that work in are people who need it for their major.